Yo, peace, cousins. This is part two to historical revisionism. Okay, I'm gonna be a little bit quick, but I need you to to pause or to look shit up if you have to. Now, this is a book written by a fairly good friend of mine. His name is Armando Pacheco Matos. Okay, and this gentleman got a book. All right, it's called The Biography of Dr. Raymond Emeterio Betances Alacan, okay? Father of Puerto Rican motherland, and then the gentleman's name. Now, when Armando made this book, his intentions was just to bring to light the person Emeterio Betances. Like, you dig what I mean? He was just trying to educate people as far as, who were the liberators of Puerto Rico, okay? Now, I'm going to read a few excerpts from this book, but obviously I'm not going to read the whole book because I would like you to go to Amazon.com and purchase the book. I think it's, $5 or $10 or something like that. It's not a thick book for people who are scared to read, like, you know what I mean? But it's very informative. Now, Mr. Armando Pacheco, okay, he received, according to this book, I'm going to read a few excerpts here. His biography, Armando Pacheco's received Bachelor of Arts in Romance Languages and a Master's degree in Education City College. He received Certificate of Administration Supervision from Fordham University. He is a New York City Board of Education retired teacher. He was born in Puerto Rico in Ponce. He lives in the Bronx, and he went to Morris High School. Okay, he's got a very good, very checkable academic background, like very familiar places to all of us. Okay, so now, all right, I'm gonna read to you just a few pages from his book. All right, now this is chapter 1. Okay, chapter 1 is called Childhood in Puerto Rico. All right, so check it. Dr. Emeterio Betances Alacan was born April 8th, 1827 in the town of Cabo Rojo, Puerto Rico, where he arrived in the New World. The Spanish Empire was governing the island with an iron fist. Okay, he grew up with 4 sisters and brothers who were older than him. In his childhood, he was very bright. He used to play tricks on his sisters. Dr. Betances was a Puerto Rican of Spanish African ancestry. He never denied his African blood. Okay, when one of his sisters was going to get married to a white man, the Betances family had to use their influence with the priest to transfer their name from mulatto book, mixed people of African and Spanish blood, to a white book. This incident was never forgotten by young Ramon, who since his early life did not agree with the abuses that were committed against Puerto Ricans. The young Ramon strongly criticized laws that didn't allow people of different races to marry each other. Okay? Now, it goes on to this is just like to give you a little insight of how, Armando is laying out the book. Remember, this is a long studied research by the man, and he's like, if you give you an example, he's like Dr. Hendrik Clark type teaching, like, the broad historical outlook. You dig what I mean? So now, here he goes now. I'm going to start from page 10. Okay? Don Felipe, I'll start from the top. Dr. Betances' father was Don Felipe Betances, and his mother was Maria del Carmen Alacan. Mr. Felipe was born in the Dominican Republic, and Mrs. Maria was born in Puerto Rico. His mother died in 1837, when Dr. Betances was only 10 years old. Since very early life, Dr. Betances demonstrated a lot of love for his education. After his mother's death, he was sent to Toulouse, France, where it was common for well-off families to send their children to Europe to study. Don Felipe had a home library that included works of famous writers. He was well educated and influenced by Masonry. Masons believed in brotherhood, sisterhood, among people in high moral standards. To be a Mason in a country dominated by the Catholic Church, one had to be well educated. Keep this in mind. Betances' mother was white. Betances' father was mulatto. And, even though he was mulatto, he was a Freemason. You dig what I mean? So the Freemasons, I think about, Puerto Rican flag, Masonic symbols. All right. So now, the priest, all right, Don Felipe used to attend Mass every Sunday, but he never sat down. That's a sure sign of a crypto Jew. Dr. Betances used to attend Mass with his father, but both of them used to stand in the back. Who does that as a Catholic, right? Miss Maria never attended Mass. It is believed that she died without ever going to confession, as is customary in the Catholic countries. Why? Because to me, she was a crypto Jew. Obviously, the Betances were not too religious. This was due to the fact that the Catholic Church was part of the government that was exploiting Puerto Ricans, was imposing taxes, and had forced Mr. Felipe to get witnesses that would testify to the fact that his mother was a distinguished white woman. The priest had presented to the public the baptism certificates where Betances appeared as blacks and as bastards. You could imagine the indignation that the Betances felt, not because they wanted to deny their African ancestry, but because the priest tried to make a mockery of something so personal. 19 witnesses came from the Dominican Republic to testify that Miss Clara Ponce de Leon, oh my God, incredible last name, right? Don Felipe's mother was a pure white person. All right? Although he knew that he had African blood, Mr. Felipe did everything possible to prove that he did not. Okay. His daughter was going to marry a white Puerto Rican, and her happiness depended on this. Parents are willing to do anything for their children's happiness, and the Betances are no exception. Miss Maria had died 3 years before all this happened. Don Felipe had to suffer the pain alone. Since then, for the Betances, religious beliefs were personal. So at one point, they're not religious, and now religious beliefs are personal, right? A religious belief that you can't speak about, right? Crypto-Judaism, right? All right, so hear this now. This is the great part. Dr. Betances grew up on Carmen Farm, property of his parents. This farm was located in a community called Bajura de Cabo Rojo, right? The 200 acres were planted with sweet sugar cane. In the farm, they had everything they needed to process the sugar cane, including tools and a mill. Mr. Felipe also had several African slaves that used to work in all aspects of the farm. We know little as to how these slaves were treated, but for Dr. Betances, there wasn't an excuse. Nobody had the right to enslave anybody. It is known that when he was young, he had a great passion for cockfights. And the fact that his father owned a farm made it him easy to own cocks, use them, and train them diligently. Okay, my point is that this is Emeterio Betances. This is the father of the Puerto Rican motherland. This is the person responsible for the Puerto Rican identity. Okay, this is the person responsible for the Puerto Rican identity, as it reads here on page 5. All right, the Puerto Rican youngsters should know that it wasn't Spanish colonization that made us Puerto Rican. Let's read that again. Puerto Rican youngsters should know that it wasn't the Spanish colonization that made us Puerto Ricans. Spain was never interested in giving freedom to the descendants of Spaniards, Indians, and Africans born in Puerto Rico. We became Puerto Ricans with the Lattes Revolution, when a group of Puerto Ricans of all races and some supporters from different countries under the leadership of Don Ramon Emeterio Betances said enough to Spanish colonization. So yes, the person that's responsible for us being Puerto Ricans was raised in a slave plantation. And although his morality was different than his parents, it doesn't change the fact that mulattoes, blacks, part blacks, partial blacks, mulattoes own slaves in Puerto Rico. And it's so easy to point out that one can just point to the leader of the abolition of slavery, so you can make the point. So there you go. I made the point that in Puerto Rico, there were mulatto slave owners, all right? Blacks, who were also Freemasonic, okay? And it just so happens that Emeterio Betances' mother's last name was De Leon, like Ponce de Leon, crypto Jew. See, I make all my points. I make my point with the crypto Jewish history. I make my point with black slave owning history. And I make my point that history is written by the victors. And if you don't try to make sense of this shit by your goddamn self and give your own opinion, don't take stuff from people that they give you the information and they give you the opinion. I just gave you the sauce. I just gave you a Boricua source. I gave you a black Boricua source of a black person in history, of the father of the motherland that owned goddamn slaves as a black family that was hidden under white pretexts under the mulatto game that people were playing. You white, you're not white, you black, you're not black. The same game we play today as Boricuas. You got Boricuas that be fucking light as day. I'm black. And then you got other ones that be black as night. I'm native. And then you got other ones that are native and I'm Spaniard, you know? That's an old game, cousins. And American history ain't gonna fuck me up. It ain't gonna fuck my mind up. Because the leadership that I know that's black are great. Okay, they're great, great, great men. That history would have never been able to take them out of the fucking box. Not in real life. Not unless there was another great circumstance in history other than slavery. Maybe, and I know I'm right, but I'm just going to put maybe there. Maybe the black slave owners were betrayed. Once transatlantic slavery was no longer available, the blacks that were slave owners became slaves themselves. Alright? So the pity pool and the pity party starts. We're always crying about slavery, and the descendants of slave masters are probably the greatest benefactors. It's tough, huh? So, for my black Americans, leave your history over there. Because Puerto Rican history speaks of a different narrative. A narrative that sometimes isn't easy to swallow, but it is part of what makes Puerto Rican people great. So peace, cousins. And, you know, I need help with this historical revisionism. There's a lot of bad information going out there on Facebook. You know? A lot of garbage being written in books just for the cause. You're being stroked. You're being masturbated. Okay? You're being sedated. You're being easily satisfied. Cállate y vete pa' allá. The same thing they did on the island. They gave everybody welfare, the welfare mentality, so you won't want to work and do big enterprise, and then there's all this business happening around you. Okay? We can no longer afford that. We need our history to speak of us and how we handled this situation. I can't go on the hatred and contempt of every fucking person on earth. Okay? I can't do that to describe what it is to be a Boricua. Because we got great black Puerto Ricans. We got great white Puerto Ricans. We got great native Puerto Ricans. We got bad history. We got good history. And we got a lot of bullshit that made it through as history, which is not fact. It don't serve us at all. Truth serves us. Honesty serves us. Okay? So peace to my Puerto Rican family, black, white, native, mixed, Jew, all of y'all. Alright? Let's separate ourselves from this fucking world right now. They're plunging into evil. They're plunging into hate. That's not what we exist for. That's not what Emeterio Betances had in mind. That's not what Pedro Abisu Campos had in mind. Okay? We got our own great leaders. And we got our own fucked up and good history. Let's not mix it with everybody else's history. It doesn't do no justice for Boricuas. So peace, cousins.